Welcome again to Live from Studio A, brought to you by the Greater Columbus Arts Council on WCBE. And this afternoon, we've been talking about special guests coming in and what it basically boils down to: a child of Appalachia and a resident of the world, as a matter of fact. Pierre Bensusan is here with his guitar. His 50th anniversary tour, which has brought him into Columbus to Natalie's tonight. And I will almost guarantee that every guitar player who's not working tonight will be there to hear you play. Welcome, Ben.
Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone.
And the amount of, I guess you could say, accolades that you have received, not only as a player, but as a teacher, really impressed me. You've have done several lessons for people over the years, and as I've gotten a little bit closer into your music, I've noticed that you have a number of students. I mean, maybe not directly students, but folks who basically have gotten their ideas about playing guitar from you. And one of the things that comes up first and foremost is the tuning of your guitar. Could you explain a little bit about that? They call it a Celtic tuning.
I don't know why it's called. I mean, I do, but I'm a self-taught guitar player. I come from classical piano, and when I taught myself how to play guitar, I had to listen to a record to know in which was going to be the standard tuning of that guitar. So I found the standard tuning, with that sound. And then I moved on and played in different other tunings. And one day I found a tuning on my own called Dadgad, D-A-D-G-A-D. And other people also have found that tuning, just by tuning down the first bass and the two treble strings, one step. And after a while, I realized that it would be good for me to focus on one way to tune a guitar and finally learn to play the guitar in that tuning. So I chose Dadgad, and in 1978, and from that time on, that's the only tuning I play.
Well, you started your career in the early 70s in France?
I started my first tour was in 1974. And then I recorded my first album in 1975, and I was also a bluegrass musician at that time. I was playing mandolin with the Bill Keith European Bluegrass Band. I was 17. And then that year I did my first record. Bill Keith played one song with me on banjo, and I was playing mandolin. And that record got the award of the best folk record of that year at the Montreux Festival. And that allowed me to tour on my own. That was the end of my bluegrass career, and that allowed me to tour on my own in Switzerland, in France, in the British Isles, and later elsewhere in Europe, and since 1979 in this country.
Well, it's almost unfair because your influences come from so many different directions, from France, as I mentioned, from Spain, from Algeria.
I was born in Algeria at the time when that country was in war to get its independence. So I was born right in the middle of the war. At the end of the war, there was a treaty signed between France and Algeria. And my parents, along with over 1 million people, chose to leave that country after my ancestors being there for hundreds of years, and to move and to relocate into mainland France. And so that's also part of my background, I guess. I don't really know. In fact, I'm just speaking inspiration when it comes, and sometimes I notice that it's coming from a lot of different places. I'm like a sponge when it comes to music. For me, music doesn't have boundaries. It has cultural boundaries, geographical boundaries, historical boundaries. But at the end of the day, a musician doesn't really hear them that way. He hears them like more like nuances, variations, different ways to express a note, the life of a note, the expression of the sustain of a note, how a note comes, how another note comes, and how a note dies and lets the space for another note, things like this, and all what you do with the notes, with the silence between them. Um, I love the guitar in a way where it's a very light instrument, opposed to the piano, where you need a room for the piano. But the guitar, you can take your guitar wherever and function as a musician, be amused anywhere you are, and transmit to people. And so you were talking about, teaching. I don't know if teaching is the right word because I quit school when I was 16, so I was pretty ignorant when I quit school, although I knew what I knew for a 16-year-old. But I learned everything I know by traveling the world, by being an artist, being a musician, and touring, and see other cultures, other people, and being very curious about their life, about what would generate them to play the music they played and why. So I was very interested in that. But I guess I like to transmit. I like to help other people to get to their musicality, what triggers them to become musician, and what could help them to raise the barriers between them and what they would like to express. So it's based on facts. What I tell them based on my research as a guitar player, and all the mistakes I did, ones to avoid, all the good things to take advantage of, the tone. And the tuning, I'm not trying to tell people to tune the way I do because I realize this is a different way and I don't want to create a mess there. But some people are very moved by this way of tuning the guitar. And when I went to Ireland in 77 for the first time, no one knew about that tuning. So I brought the tuning with me. And it's the tuning that I choose because a lot of Irish music was very adequate for this tuning, or I should say the tuning was very adequate for Irish music. And so this is how I started my career to play a bit of Irish and Celtic stuff on the guitar in that tuning and other tunings. And I guess that's what in Ireland started something,
It's live from Studio A on WCBE, and I'm in the studio live with Pierre Bensusan. And I'd like to ask if you could play a song for us.
We'd love
to start out. And could you take us back to some of your early experience and how you have developed?
Well, you see, I was talking about this tuning. This tuning takes me to almost to my North African roots with those Ds.
listening to Live from Studio A, brought to you by the Greater Columbus Arts Council, only on WCBE. And in the studio with Terry Wilson this afternoon, it's Pierre Bensusan, and he is going to bring that sound and a whole lot more to Natalie's tonight. And you're very familiar with the venue, from what I understand.
Yes, I think this is a new venue, and last year I played there already. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, you are certainly welcome in this town. Now, that piece had kind of a North African feel to it?
In fact, it's a Turkish piece.
Okay.
So before the French, the Ottoman Empire was ruling North Africa. And they have been leaving their footprints in the culture of every places. And I knew that piece called Ekimoglu from an American friend whose father was the representative of the U.S. at the United Nations, and every 4 years he would travel and live in a different country. So that was a time for him and his family to live in Ankara. So she spent 4 years in Turkey, and she was so curious about the culture and the music. She learned a lot of songs, and she taught me that song.
It's beautiful.
It's very beautiful. It's a very well-known ballad. A couple of years ago, my wife and I went to Istanbul, and I played that song with a very, very good musician from Istanbul. And it was very interesting to see how we were both perceiving that song. He was interested to see my perception of it.
So you are actually getting a good opportunity to get feedback. I mean, people like Tommy Emmanuel and Steve Vai have called you a master.
That's very touching.
You are in the music. You're certainly,
Yeah.
that guitar seems to be part of your being.
Yeah.
And
That's the idea.
And at times it's almost breathtaking, some of the things that you do. I wouldn't call them tricks, because they're things that I don't think a normal guitarist could actually do unless they had spent a lot of time listening and rehearsing the type of music that you play.
Yeah. You know, the guitar is a very funny instrument. Andres Segovia used to say this is the easiest and the hardest instrument. And in a way, you play a few chords and that's it. You are enrolled in the magic of this instrument. But this instrument is totally unlimited. It's limited to the imagination of the player, in fact. You know, it's available to do so many things. For me, it's a little orchestra. So it's my portable orchestra, you know. And coming from the piano, a part of me is always looking for that sort of polyphonic quality to the music, to add counterpoint and stuff. And it's a very interesting way to look at the guitar this way, like a lot of great composers have been composing for guitar. You know.
I'm in the studio with Pierre Bensusan on WCBE. It's live from Studio A. And could we ask for another song, Maestro?
Sure. Oh, in fact, I'm going to start differently.
in the studios of WCBE. The program is called Live from Studio A, brought to you by the Columbus Arts Council. And yes, indeed, the sound of the world brought to you tonight and brought to the stage of Natalie's The One Voice, One Guitar Tour, 50th anniversary. Congratulations on
Thank you.
making it to that
Oh,
point.
I'm the first surprised. I haven't seen those 50 years go by. I had too much fun.
Pierre is gracing us with his presence live this afternoon on this radio station, and really very happy to be able to do that. One, I guess, in a sense, to reintroduce to a lot of folks the mastery that is possible from the acoustic guitar. Now, tell us a little bit about your instrument, if you
My
don't
guitar
mind.
comes from Northern Ireland, made by George Loudon, a friend from Downpatrick in County Down, where St. Patrick is down. And I play on George Loudon's guitar since 1978. And for 25 years, the guitar he built for me then was my only guitar. I didn't have any spare guitar, nothing, just one guitar. And people were very intrigued because I was touring the world with it. And they said, so what, you travel with one guitar? And I said, well, yeah, that's for me, it's one guitar. Well, that's all I need. What about if you break it? And I would say to them, but why would I break my guitar? Why would I lose my guitar? Why, if and if? You know, I pay attention to my guitar. What I like about the fact to have only one guitar is that there is no hesitation, like, oh, which guitar am I going to take? One guitar, and that guitar had to be giving me every sound it could, you know, and I had to go and look for the sound myself, which is a big part of what musicians do, is to look for the sound wherever that sound is. And sometimes that sound is not obvious. You have to go and look for it, and you have to listen carefully. And I would say that a lot of instruments have a lot of resources that sometimes we don't imagine, because we are looking for something, but we are not looking for a lot of things. When we stop looking for that thing and want to look for another thing, we switch instruments and go to another instrument which will offer that immediacy. And I think one guitar, when it's a great it has to say everything it has to say. You know?
It feels like it's part of you as part of your person.
After a while, that's the idea. I mean, that's the idea that your instrument becomes a part of your expression, and that it's no longer an alien or a stranger to your life. You know, it's like looking at the fretboard. I look at the fretboard, but sometimes I don't, because my fingers are my eyes, and my ears are my eyes. I don't need my eyes to look at the instrument. I prefer to close my eyes sometimes and listen carefully to what I play. And all the geometry and the geography of my fingerboard is in my imagination. It's in my mind. I have it. It's my inner vision. It's interesting. That's something that I pass on to the people who come to my seminars. I say, let's try to close your eyes and not look. It's okay if you make mistakes, but try to focus on let your fingers measure the distance, the space, the relationship between the notes, the horizontality, the verticality. You know, let your fingers discover their territory, because this is their home. That fretboard is the home of your fingers on both hands. So let your hands guide you, because as soon as you start looking, for me, I'm talking for me, it's distracting. It could lead towards chaos. It could, you know.
In the studio of WCBE with the one and only Pierre Bensusan, playing at Natalie's tonight, 50th anniversary tour. And do you have something special from Ireland? I think you have one piece that is called...
In fact, I wanted to sing for you a poem of Victor Hugo, on which I wrote music. It's called Demain dès l'aube, Tomorrow at Dawn. et l'eau, à l'heure où blanchit la campagne, je partirai, je sais que tu m'attends. J'irai par la forêt, j'irai par la montagne, je ne puis demeurer loin de toi plus longtemps. Je marcherai les yeux fixés sur mes pensées, sans rien voir dehors, sans entendre aucun bruit. Seul, inconnu, le dos courbé et les mains croisées, et pour moi le jour sera comme la nuit. Maintenant que Paris c'est pavé et c'est marbre et ça brûle et ces toits sont bien loin de mes yeux. Maintenant que je suis sous les branches des arbres et que je puis songer à la beauté des cieux. Maintenant qu'attendri par ces divins spectacles, plaines, rochers, forêts, vallons, fleuves argentés, voyant ma petitesse et voyant vos miracles, je reprends ma raison devant l'immensité. Nous ne voyons jamais qu'un seul côté des choses, l'autre plonge dans la nuit d'un mystère effrayant. L'homme subit le jour